Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar entitled Be Your Own Best Advocate, Workplace Advancement for Female Attorneys, brought to you by the ABA Young Lawyers Division Women in the Profession Committee. We've got an exciting program planned for you today. We have two attorneys from across the country who've gone through the trials and tribulations of navigating the workplace as a female attorney and the obstacles they've faced and how they've overcome them. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Amy Fan Taylor, and I'll be serving as today's moderator. I'm an associate attorney in the Seattle office of Gordon & Reese, where I focus on litigation matters. Joining today are Jessica Nguyen and Nancy Shilepsky. Nancy is the General Counsel of Payscale, a high-growth technology company based in the Seattle area that is the market leader in compensation data and compensation management solutions. Nancy is a partner at Sherin Lodgen LLP. She's the practice group leader of the employment group there and is a leading influence in the world of executive advocacy, employment law, and litigation issues. All right, so let's dive into our questions for our speakers today. Please advance the slide. Great. So our first question for Jessica is, what do you do and how did you get there?
Hi there. Well, good question. So I am the General Counsel at Payscale, and I run the legal department of the organization. I am the first attorney at Payscale. They've never had one before. And I came here in 2017, and prior to Payscale, I worked at 5 other organizations, at 2 law firms, and at Microsoft, and 2 other tech startups. So I have a long history of working in the technology industry. How would I say I got here is I've been practicing law for about 13 years now, though I don't qualify for the Young Lawyers Division. I'm not old-ish. I'm 38 this year. But what accelerated my elevation and growth to become a general counsel is not the length of my practice, but the intensity of my practice. And that is from working at high-growth startups where in a year span, I'm negotiating hundreds of deals, or I'm building out processes, I'm doing public speaking, I'm presenting, I'm training. So I like to say that how I got here was taking on really hard challenges and a lot of responsibilities in a short time frame, and really basically very quickly building out skills, a network, and experiences. So that's who I am.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. And how about yourself, Nancy?
I have been an employment lawyer for over 35 years now. I'm the chair of my department in employment law. I think it's interesting. I've actually practiced in 11 different settings. And I think that, and as we go on, I think we'll talk more about it, or I'll talk more about it. I got to where I am by sort of making the moves that were necessary to keep growing in my career. So I've had 11 different jobs, arguably. I had my own firm for a long time, if I'll count that. But I've had the same group of colleagues who became friends, who became the people who helped me build the practice I built, and it's through that network that I got to where I am.
Great, thank you. Okay, our next question is going to deal with career hurdles. So Jessica, could you discuss some of the career hurdles you faced as a young attorney?
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't been practicing as long as Nancy. And what was interesting when I graduated, the economy, the demand for new graduates was lukewarm. So I graduated in 2006. In the Seattle market, folks were still recovering from the dot-com bust, and I very much wanted to be a business and transactional lawyer, and the demand for that type of lawyer was mediocre. And it started to rise somewhat in the realm of commercial real estate. So where I landed was to become a business lawyer, was to do a lot of commercial real estate transactions right out of law school. So I did work at two different law firms shortly after out of law school. But then the Great Recession happened in 2008, 2009, and that was reflected in my billable hours in 2009. And so frankly, I was let go from my law firm in 2010, and that was really hard. And, to feel like you have worked your butt off, right, to do all that you can to meet the billable hour requirements and still work was dry. And to stay busy, I did whatever needed to be done. I did some litigation work. I did some bankruptcy work. So that was one hurdle, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I have no regrets because I don't miss working at a law firm whatsoever. So that was a hurdle that actually forced me over the next interviewing few months to take time off, self-reflect, and network. And so there was a lot of in between the law firm that laid me off and a little unknown tech startup that hired me. There was a lot of networking and interviewing and hustling, to be honest with you. And so shortly thereafter, I landed at an unknown startup called Avalara. And actually, Avalara last year went IPO, and they have now over roughly 2,000 employees globally. But when I was there in 2010 and hired, they've never had a lawyer, and they had less than 100 employees. So it really accelerated my growth, but it also helped me identify my passion to help small, quickly growing companies scale and build. And I realized from that experience that I was a builder and not a biller. Some other hurdles that I witnessed through my 13-year history and career and working at 6 different organizations was there wasn't necessarily a correlation between the impact that you brought to an organization and a reward. And if you think of a reward as sort of a pay raise or a promotion, this is more necessarily in the corporate realm. Law firms are very transparent about what it takes to become a partner. It's generally you hit a billable requirement, you have a book of clients. But in the corporate world, it's very different. And especially at larger corporations, where your advancement is really dependent on who your manager is and are they a great advocate for you. And also being very political, playing the political game, doing work and projects that is visible to leaders in the organization. So I did see and witness over the course of my career outside of a law firm that some folks who were promoted or got a pay raise weren't necessarily the best lawyers or the most impactful to the organization. And that was very disheartening. And then the last point, the career hurdle that I have witnessed is that there's a lot of folks in the legal profession that are promoted to management roles or leadership roles and are actually very terrible managers and leaders, but excellent lawyers. So they're great. They're a great subject matter expert in their respective area of field. They went to the best law schools, and I'm sure they're great lawyers. But they're not passionate about being a people manager or actually leading an organization. But what I've seen is, but those are the folks that get promoted. And so, anyways, so those are the folks. As I was trying to. I'm quite ambitious, and as I was trying to grow and learn, I noticed that it was very hard to get information from some of my managers about what it takes to grow and learn and how to be a better lawyer and how to be the best version of me, because frankly, they weren't equipped to be a people coach or a mentor or a manager. So it's very interesting to see that. I've had some great managers, but I've actually learned quite a bit from also my very terrible managers that I've had.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. And next, how about you, Nancy? What were some career hurdles you faced as when you were starting out?
Before I do that, I just want to say one theme that I love that we're developing here is this notion of moving to a new job can be a really good thing for your career. When I was coming up, that wasn't what you were told. You know, it was you were supposed to stick it out and whatever. And that wasn't always the best career path for women. It certainly wasn't for me. In terms of specific hurdles that, you know, I had, one was, you know, being, I don't know if it was underestimated or what it was, but not getting the great assignments all the time. I grew up when, you know, women were taught, and I think women still are taught, that somehow your responsibility to make everyone feel okay or feel comfortable. And so, you know, and a woman who sort of put herself forward got a lot of, you know, blowback that men didn't get. And that was a tough thing to sort of get past, both internally, you know, my feeling like, you know, I'm supposed to make other people feel good, and the expectation that that is a woman's role. So one of my career hurdles is honestly, it's a level of humility that isn't, you know, about lack of confidence or any of those things, but it's sort of like you're not supposed to blow your own horn. Well, in the field of law, that's a mistake. You know, you do need to blow your own horn, and I've learned that. A second hurdle is it's also connected with that issue of how, you know, people see women. It's that, you know, being tough and not being ladylike and whatever, you got a lot of negative feedback for that. But if you want to be a successful litigator, you can't let that negative feedback stop you from doing what's best for your client. And what, you know, for me, how I overcame a lot of that was I learned early on my client came first. And if my client came first, it really didn't matter whether opposing counsel, you know, liked me or didn't like me. If my client came first, it frankly didn't matter whether the partner liked me or didn't like me. You know, and I had situations where I knew I was right about something, but it wasn't the common wisdom in the firm, and I had to keep pushing, and my pushing was not appreciated. But I was right. It was best for the client. The partner in question eventually thanked me for not letting go. But that was a tough one for me because I was one of those, you know, girls who was raised to want to be liked and to be good and all of those things. So finally, let me just say more about that. One career hurdle for me was having to learn not to let go of the notion that everything has to be nice and everything has to be comfortable, and that's my job to keep it nice and comfortable. The hurdle for me, and it turned out not to be a hurdle, it turned out to be an escape hatch. And it was that my clients' interests were more important than my comfort level. So those were my hurdles and some of how I overcame them.
Great. Thanks, Jessica and Nancy. So our next question is going to deal with pivotal professional development moments. Jessica, would you please discuss what were some of those early developed moments for you?
Yeah, I definitely alluded to it in the last slide and in my last time I spoke, and it definitely a pile on to Nancy's feedback too. That really what has been beneficial for my career, my growth in not just in my skills and even my compensation has been moving. And so here's why, because Jenna, like even if I was doing an amazing job at a corporation, let's say Microsoft, because that was the last corporation that I worked at, each year my base salary would only go up roughly COLA, 2 to 3%. And even if I got a promotion to a next level, because a lot of corporations use a leveling system, my growth in my base salary would only be 10% or less. So what does this mean is that in order to accelerate the growth of my base salary or compensation, I would have to leave the organization and be an external hire to some other organization. And so by moving from Avalara to another tech company called Haibu, and then from there even moving to Microsoft and then to Payscale, in each of those moves, I was able to increase my base salary by quite a bit based on my market value. So moving around has been very beneficial, and part of it from an organization's defense, it is extremely hard to justify that I should give Jessica an increase in her annual increase by more than 20% year over year, when the rest of the organization is only growing between 2 to 10%, right? So to tie it back to what's on the slide, it was a pivotal moment for me too, was realizing what my passions were, what I was actually good at, and what I really enjoyed doing. And that was in 2010 when I was laid off from a law firm. It was called Karen Cross. I was hired to do a lot of technology, licensing, commercial real estate, just business work and M&A work. All that work dried up in 2008, 2009. And so what I had a decision. So after networking a bunch, right after I was laid off, I had a choice to join this crazy unknown startup called Avalara and get paid significantly less than what I was paid at a law firm, have some options, but paid a lot less. I think my base salary at Avalara was more than $40,000 less per year than it was at Karen Cross, this law firm. But at that time, 9 years ago, I was in my 20s. I had no children and I had no mortgage. And so the other option that I had on the table was to be a contract or associate at a technology boutique law firm. So they had very low overhead, and we're still very busy because Seattle has quite a bit of technology companies here, based here. And I took the path of less money but greater experience because I could. I didn't have the mortgage, right? I didn't have the children. I didn't have the responsibility. So I indexed more on the experience and skills that I would obtain through the Avalara experience over the back to the law firm experience where I would do contracts and bill accordingly. So that was a very pivotal moment for me because I would not have be a general counsel today had I chosen the path of being an associate at a technology boutique law firm, because I wouldn't have the business judgment and the skills and the perspective that I have today through all those experiences. Other professional pivotal moments for me were also included just building business allies at the various organizations I've been through. So I wrote here Microsoft and Payscale. I have great allies here who have elevated my personal brand. For example, the CFO at Payscale was the one who nominated me to become a 40 under 40 Puget Sound Business Journal Award honoree. But before even Payscale, it's such a small community. The Payscale executive team, when I was going through the hiring process, called the executive team of Avalara. They're like, hey, 8 years ago, this young lawyer worked for you. What is she like, right? And even though I left Avalara, I left on great terms. They understood why I left. And it was because of the ally and the endorsement that I got from my Avalara executive team. I became the general counsel at Payscale. So I was very fortunate to have those professional allies. And then the last point that I wrote in the slide here is embracing my wins. And Nancy alluded to that as well about just own what a badass you are. I mean, just tell people because otherwise no one is going to know. And that's what I saw too when I was on at Microsoft, where I noticed that the people who would tell people how great they were and what they've achieved moved further along than the people who just sat in their office and did good work, which, it's good. You're not going to get fired, but you're also not going to be known or seen. And when an organization, and because I worked at Microsoft for almost 4 years, has over 1,000 people in their organization, that's how you get ahead. You have to be known for something, known for and have a brand. And if you don't have a manager that's going to do that for you, then just do it yourself. And with LinkedIn, it's so easy to do now in a non-obnoxious way.
Great. Thanks, Jessica. And how about yourself, Nancy? What were some pivotal professional moments for you?
Well, one that's not on the slide, but is consistent with the theme here, which I love the theme, of kind of really managing your own career and your own life, was I, at some point, had worked my way up within a law firm to being on the executive committee and being on the comp committee and chairing the comp committee. I was at a place where I was doing quite well within a law firm, but the team I worked with was a team that wanted to, and rightfully so, strike out on their own and do this kind of, boutique law firm thing in our particular field. And they wanted me to do this. And the pivotal moment for me, actually, I think it was in Italy or Spain or something. I was on vacation and they called and they said, we want to sign a lease. We need you to do it with us. We know it's a risk. I was the only one who was, walking away from a lot. And I said yes. And it was, without doubt, the smartest thing ever to have, with this group of people, begun our own law firm. It was a risk. It was very similar. It's like I was going away from, a nice certain compensation to a far riskier, God knows if we'd even, what we'd do the first year. I mean, they all made far more money the first year. I made far less, but we made it up. And it was very, very successful, and it was the wisest business move I'd ever made. So that's for later in your careers, but going out on your own, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense to, that money you're earning, put it in your own pocket, not in somebody else's. Anyway, in terms of what I have on the slide, and this is hugely important, was I had mentors. I really had people who sponsored my career. It was more than mentoring. It really was sponsorship. I'm an employment lawyer. Employment lawyers, we are kind of a close group. We are, by and large, we love our field. We love the law. We love, we really are very much our own thing. I'm sure that's true of other fields as well, but I know it's true of labor and employment. And two people, neither in a firm I worked for outside my firms, really took me under their wings and sponsored me. One of them was a senior labor and employment partner at a multinational law firm who, for whatever reason, and that's false humility there, saw something in me and wanted to work with me. And we wrote an article together. It was cited by a judge. It was, suddenly my name was out there. The other was a woman in-house counsel at a multinational corporation who taught me executive compensation work because she wanted me to learn her company's executive compensation documents and represent her friends in their negotiations with the company. Those things gave me the brand. It gave me the name recognition. It gave me the brand. It put me in a different position in my career than other people. And so the pivotal, somewhere in here I say, and I want to keep saying it, I think the important thing is to find the people who support you and spend your time with them, invest in your time in them. Not the people who are looking to put you down, not the people who don't value you, not the people who don't see your worth. That's a waste of time. Find the ones who really are going to help you move ahead in your career.
Great. Thanks. That's some really great advice. So our next question deals with professional development, but under the angle of what do you wish you had known about professional development as you were starting out? And we're going to have Jessica kick off that question.
Yeah. Thanks, Amy. So what I wrote here was basically a lot of self-reflection about who you are and what makes you tick. So I'll just speak for myself because I know me, and I know me more than I ever have. And I wish that I knew me more when I was younger. But for me to be honest, I didn't have a ton of professional role models growing up. So for me to learn and get to the place that I am today, there was a lot of trial and error. There was, 6 different places of employment, and there was multiple types of projects that I've worked on. I've never been a specialist in any type of area of law. I'm a specialist in all the things. So with that said, I think you need to be authentic and self-aware, and that's and if you are, you will it will shine through in your interviews, in how you communicate, and also just enjoying yourself day to day. So what I do, not daily, but maybe every 6 months or so, I think about what next. And so I hate the interview question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Because the reality is I have no freaking idea. And that is very much reflected in my background. On average, I've moved companies every 2 to 5 years. So I can't honestly say that I will be at a certain organization and elevated to be a partner or an executive in 5 years. But the real answer is I can say that I want to be a better version of myself, and these are the skills that I would like to collect over the next few years through this organization. And so how do I build upon my resume, and how do I get better at what I do in my trade? I also think about the who has a career that I admire. So I am in my late 30s. I have 2 young children under the age of 7. I'm busy. I have a team I manage. I work at a hyper-growth company where growth is double digits year over year. I can't do it all. And I think about someone who is very similar situated to me and what career they have and aspire to that. And a person like that, so actually the funny thing is, after I left Avalara, Avalara hired a woman a couple years afterwards. Her name is Alicia Penny. She's the current general counsel and executive vice president of Avalara. She has 2 children, and she actually lives about 50 yards away from me. And I adore her, and I admire her because she's had a very successful career. She's known to be tough as nails and very competent at what she does. She goes to all of her kids, sporting events and games, and her kids do well. Her husband's very active in the parent-teacher organization community, which is rare because even today, more women are involved with the PTA or parent-teacher organization than the fathers. So I loved that it was her husband that was the chair of, fundraising for the schools and more active in the parent-teacher organization than her. And that I admire that. For them to find that balance in their family, that was a division of responsibility. So, and I think about like the why. Why do I admire that? Because in my mind, there really is no work-life balance, but am I happy in all aspects of my life? And do I get up and am I excited to go into work and what I'm doing? Am I excited to see my children at the end of the day and show them that I'm a good role model and that they can become an executive of an organization too? Despite, my children are girls and they are completely Asian, and there's a lot of stereotypes and hurdles that they're going to have to work through. And so I like to demonstrate for them strength and advocacy that I do for myself, and then hopefully that they know that it is possible for them as well.
Great. Thanks, Jessica. And Nancy, what do you wish you had known about professional development?
I think for me, I spent a lot of time doing a lot of things. And it was time that was not necessarily well spent. Over time, I learned to sort of focus the time I have. Because, I think what we're also saying here is, we have limited time and we have, we need to spend it wisely. And that was something I didn't know at first. I mean, I was somebody who thought you had to do everything and sign up for everything and take part in everything. And so I wish I'd known to be wiser and more thoughtful about how I spent my professional development time. I eventually got there, but there was a lot of wasted time along the way.
Great. I know both of you touched base around this issue already, but let's focus in more. I'd like to ask about workplace advocacy and get an understanding of what that means to each of you. Jessica?
Yeah. So I put here three very clear, bulleted, actionable items. And these are the things that I try to do and incorporate into my day-to-day function. Because generally, when I think about my career, my overall goal is to be happy and to be the best version of myself. And so how do I get there? Well, ask for feedback. Like, how am I doing? So, and how could I have done something better? And I am not a great fan of biannual or annual performance reviews because I think that's too late. I think if there's any correction that needs to be made, I want to know in real time. So I oftentimes ask for feedback, not just from people who are more senior than me, but also from my team and the people that I manage or other peers along the group. Hey, how did I do there? How did I do on that call? Or how was that email? How did it come off? Did I do okay? So I ask for feedback all the time, and I love it because I think you learn from everyone, regardless of seniority, because everyone comes to the table with a different lens and perspective and different strengths and weaknesses. The other bulleted that I put here that I try to do is to give positive feedback to others. And this is not just within an organization, but also outside of your organization. I didn't just do this because I thought of it myself. I was actually the beneficiary of it when I was back at Microsoft. I was about 3 years in, or 2.5 years in at Microsoft, feeling like my growth was stagnating from a promotion advancement standpoint. And out of nowhere, and out of cycle of the review cycle at Microsoft, one of the most senior engineering leaders there for Office 365, so very influential, sent an email to my management chain. So not just my manager, but her manager, describing to them about how much he valued my help and the impact that I had to his organization. And actually 6 months thereafter, I finally got a promotion. So he wasn't even in the legal department. He was a client, and he was technically a part of the engineering organization and the business group. And that has such a profound impact on me, not just for my career, but also on me personally. And it wasn't hard to do. It probably took him 5 minutes to write that email to let him know that he appreciated me. So I pay it forward, right? I do that today all the time, whether it be inside my organization or outside my organization, and I do it all the time with my team. I'm always telling them how thankful I am for them, and I'm always telling them what they do well, what I think their strengths are, and how they can leverage those strengths in a particular project or scenario. And the last point that, workplace advocacy is, earlier I mentioned that not all managers are great managers, want to be people managers, or are trained or equipped to be managers. But they're managers anyway, because that's just how the cookie crumbles, because they were good at lawyering, right? And they were at the right place at the right time, given the organizational structure. So regardless of who you get as your manager or advocate within an organization, you can control that, and as much as you can, try to control what you can. And one way that you can take control of that is self-reflect, like I said earlier, about what your goals are. What are the skills you want to collect? So what I could do at Microsoft, even though at some points I didn't have a manager who's exactly an advocate for me, what I could do was tell the manager, hey, you know what? I would really love to add to my Microsoft resume an M&A transaction where Microsoft is acquiring a smaller company. Or I would love to be involved in a transaction where Microsoft integrates its technology with another, high-profile technology. And these are the skills I want to collect. That's something that the manager can help you with, and to tell what your goals are, articulate it. Because I would never, ever assume that your manager is thinking about you, your strengths, your goals, and the things and the ways that you want to grow. So why not just say it? Because no one's going to think badly of you for wanting to be better. So do it. Just ask. And so I did. Actually, at Microsoft, I spent my last 2 years trying to do as much as I can and being involved as much as I can to diversify my perspective and experience, which in turn led me to be very marketable and get the job and become the general counsel at Payscale.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. And Nancy, can you talk a little bit about what workplace advocacy means for you?
Well, I'm coming at this a bit from my background as an employment lawyer, and the sorts of things that I see, that make a difference for people in their careers and have made a difference for my clients. And on the slide, I talk about, advocating for meaningful assignments. I say that because, we hear in cases, oh, we can't promote so-and-so, she doesn't have experience in XYZ. So advocate for that experience. I think Jessica and I are saying the same thing in different ways, but if that's an experience you need, put yourself out there and ask for it. Opportunities for networking and career advancement, client relationships, right? Opportunities to connect with clients, ask for the opportunities. And compensation, pay attention and don't be afraid to ask. I think, though, what I feel like we do need to talk about, or I want to at least raise, is for a woman to ask and a man to ask aren't necessarily the same, and the responses aren't necessarily going to be the same. And I've seen that in my, with my clients. For me, because I changed jobs as often as I did, if I thought I wasn't being appropriately treated or I wasn't getting the right experience or I wasn't whatever, I moved around a lot. I mean, I sort of, my form of advocacy was often, oh, well, this looks better, whatever. And that worked. But internally, I think one has to remember, discrimination is alive and well. And so what I counsel clients is, if, for example, you think you're being, not paid fairly and you want to ask for a raise or a larger bonus or, to be considered for partnership or whatever, be prepared. Advocate for yourself the way you would for a client. You don't walk into court and just say, give it to me because I want it. You go in and you know the precedent and you know the law and you know the equities and you know how the judge has ruled on other things. You go in prepared and you don't make it personal. It's, it's not personal. So I would stress that workplace advocacy, think of it as you would client advocacy and bring the same professionalism to the discussions. And if at first you get a no, go back. Wait a few months, have some other accomplishment, go back in. So I think workplace advocacy is an ongoing process, but I think we need to not fool ourselves into thinking that it's a level playing field out there. I don't think it is.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. So next, let's talk about what are some key concepts when it comes to professional development and what are some of the myths when it comes to professional development. Jessica?
Sure. Since I've already talked a lot about what I believe here on this slide, I'm going to actually connect with Nancy's discussion about compensation, which I think is a very different analysis when you're thinking about compensation at a law firm versus compensation at a company and being an in-house attorney, which I haven't been at a law firm for a very long time. But in fairness to a law firm, and from a perspective of a young lawyer, you don't have a lot of leverage coming out of law school. But the good news is if you're going to land at a law firm, your compensation is pretty much set. Most starting associates, it should have the same base salary and billable hour requirements, and you get a certain bonus if you exceed those billable hour requirements. Where I think things become controversial in terms of compensation for law firms and inequitable, and Nancy can speak more than I can on this, is when you become a partner and it becomes the origination credit and whatnot. So what I can speak more to is on the in-house perspective. To be very, very frank, I never negotiated my comp in my early years. I was just thankful to get a job and get experience. And there were some misses there. I should have negotiated for higher comp or higher sign-on bonus or more stock when I went from Karen Cross to Avalara. But again, I was laid off. I didn't have a job. I just wanted the experience, and I was so excited. I was in my 20s, and I just wanted to learn, and I was just happy to have a job. So I took it. Luckily, that has compensated me down long term, but I should have asked for more. And so that benefited me when so fast forward 2 years after I got hired on at Avalara, 2012, the economy turned around, and all of a sudden, a ton of recruiters are pinging me on LinkedIn because there wasn't a ton of experienced SaaS or software as a service technology lawyers coming out of the recession, like because lawyers like me were laid off or doing work that was not relevant to the technology realm. So all of a sudden, my 2 years at Avalara increased my stock by 200%. And I asked for a raise at Avalara, and because I was their first lawyer, they didn't know my value. And so when I told them that I was getting offers through recruiters, about 60,000 more in base, they were like blown away. And it wasn't budgeted in their defense, right? And as you work at an organization, you'll realize that a lot of companies, we work on our annual budgets the previous year. And so I was so marketable, I left. I went to this unknown company called Haibu, and I was pregnant, so I had to negotiate a higher comp, a sign-on bonus, and also maternity leave because I wasn't protected by FMLA. But that's when I started to advocate for myself. It wasn't my first 5 years of practice. It was after I became extremely marketable and I was in high demand, to be very honest. So so I guess it isn't really tied to the myth, but I did want to talk about that since Nancy did bring it up and talk about my personal experience about advocating. Let's see. So a myth, again, that I want people to make sure, I'll go back to this slide, is that don't assume that your manager has your best interest or is always thinking about your development, growth, and career. Never make that assumption. I worked at large organizations, and also, you don't even know if your manager is going to be the same manager in 6 months. When I was at Microsoft, I had 3 different managers, and I was only there for about 4 years. So never make that assumption. You take control of your career, and you control the narrative, and you control your brand. Another myth, and I talked about this earlier, was that you'll simply be rewarded for working hard and doing good work. Myth. All right. The people that get ahead are the people that ask to get ahead, and let people know that they're doing good work and working hard. So if you don't have that in an advocate, a sponsor, a mentor, or whoever, an ally, then you got to take control of that yourself and control your brand and narrative. And there's so many mechanisms now today that make it easier than back in the day when you needed that sponsor because it was taboo to be your self-advocate. So those are the 2 myths to tie it back to the slide.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. And Nancy, can you discuss, with regard to professional development, and then what are some myths that come along with that, you think?
Sure. So, my takeaway from my professional development really is, build your skills and expertise, build your network, and build your brand. And those are the things that work for me. The myths that I think we've, keep hammering home is when I was coming up, there was a myth that if you changed jobs too often, that would reflect poorly on you. I think that's a total myth. I mean, you have to have explanations for the changes. People will ask. But if they're legitimate explanations, good. Let a new employer know, you're conscious of your career. Another myth that I also talked about was that, all networking leads to business. Like I said, I spent a lot of time that didn't lead to business and didn't lead to building a practice. This is something I say, and I always, say, look, don't take it the wrong way. It's just as easy to be friends with people who are going to be able to help you in your career as otherwise. And that's just the truth, because there's a lot of great people out there. My closest friends became other labor and employment lawyers, and opposing counsel. I my girls group, my girls night out group, are all my former opposing counsel. They became the people who then sent me work, and I sent them work when things came to me. That one is in house. Obviously, I didn't send her work, but she sent me, lots of work over the years, and these are my best friends. So I think the myth of that you have to do everything, you have to be seen everywhere, or whatever. Hopefully, people know you pick and choose, and it's much more important, I think, to invest in specific things, such as bar activities. That was very helpful for me in creating a network. Not everything, not all time is time well spent. That's all I would say.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. So for our last question for our presenters today, before we hopefully have time to move on to audience questions, is with regard to challenges new attorneys are facing and what our presenters think might be their solutions. So let's just have Jessica kick off.
Yeah. So a challenge that I can put it here is just generally you don't have experience, and the teachings that you get from law school don't really prepare you for practice, and in particular, practice in the transactional world. I think law schools do an excellent job of helping you generally think like a lawyer and problem solve and learn how to write and research, but that's not really what I do day to day, right, as a general counsel of a tech company. So lack of experience is a general challenge. As you can tell from my background, and as I've spoken about today, I collected a lot of experiences, and that has been absolutely beneficial for me. So a solution that I challenge all of you to think about to do is to take a risk if you can. And I stress if you can. And this is what I did during the middle of the economic recession, was rather than take the safe path to working as an associate at a law firm, doing what I've known I could do and following the known quantity, I took the other path of just diving in to a hot mess of a problem and just diving in and getting all of this experience, all of this ownership and autonomy, and building credibility with business leaders and technology leaders in the community. I wouldn't have gotten that credibility had I taken the other path, the safe and known path, as a law firm associate doing technology work. And so if you can, because you can afford to take that risk, and again, when I took the job at Avalere, I could afford to take the risk. I didn't have children in daycare. I didn't have a huge mortgage. I didn't have huge student loan obligations, and the comp that they offered me was enough. Take it, because sometimes, a lot of folks who get promoted to executive positions at corporations, I can't speak for law firms, but at companies, are the folks who have a proven track record of accomplishing something. And so you can't get there unless you actually, run toward the fire, run toward the problem, get in there, put out the fire, or fix the problem, and then get known to be the one who fixes it. So yeah, if you can take the risk early on in your career, seek out the opportunities that will optimize for your learning and not for the compensation or title.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. And Nancy, it looks like you think the challenge new attorneys are facing is actually competition. Can you discuss more about that and what you think the solution is to that?
Well, I agree entirely with what Jessica said. I think that getting the experience is really, really matters. And, I was thinking, especially if you're in a law firm or willing to work at a small law firm, for example, if you develop a niche of what you are good at and they need you because you know it, firms don't like to have to keep training people. So if you get a foot in the door and get a chance to develop something that you're good at and let it be known that you're good at it, you have a lot more flexibility. I mean, one of the things I'm proudest of in my career is that I've, dealt with women who I've known them since I've hired them from law school, through being associates, through being partner, and through them having, kids and the whole thing. And I say to people, I don't do that, it's not, I do this because I'm a feminist. Well, yes, but I'm also a business person. And what I do is, I've said this for years, and it happened, a whole group of women came through like this with me. Be really good at something. And then you get to write your ticket. Maybe you don't get to write the whole ticket that you want to write, but you get a lot more flexibility because firms are about making money. And training new people, getting clients comfortable with new people, all of that is just, it takes time and it costs money. So, I tell people, position yourself. And sometimes it means, like Jessica was saying, is you take a risk. You start out not at necessarily the highest paying job and not necessarily, exactly where you want to be, but it gives you the opportunity to develop a skill set that an organization needs. So, that's, I know that's hard, but if you can do it, I think that's the way to go.
Great. So thanks to Jessica and Nancy for their time today. We have a couple more minutes left for questions. And this first question from the audience members goes to your personal brand. And how do you advocate for your personal brand without coming off arrogant? Either Jessica or Nancy can take this question.
Nancy, do you want to go first?
Yeah. I think that it's by not being arrogant. It's by, having the expertise to back up the brand you're trying to market. I think that, again, I don't think it's a level playing field. I think the guy who comes in beating his chest saying, I'm, God on high, gets respected in a way that a woman may not get that same response. And I think you have to be mindful of it. So, you give credit where credit is due. I mean, I think that people like hearing that. Oh, and it was so great. The team did such a great job. They want to hear that. But then don't let it end there. Make sure the team did such a great job. And I was so happy that when I, looked at the such and such case, I saw the whatever. Do both. Do both. Praise the team. Make sure your own accomplishments are named.
All right. Well, I'll give a more personal anecdote. So I would define my personal brand as one that is great at inspiring and motivating. And there's two components of that. So one, within my organization, I'm known to have a very high performing legal team that, we have 3 of us, but we do the work of 10. So we've gotten accolades within our organization, and individually, my team members are always getting thank yous, flowers, booze, chocolates, whatever, to show how much appreciation they're getting from across the organization. So one brand of mine is being able to coach, mentor, and inspire the team that I have to do their best work, to be engaged, to be productive, and to be valued, and I always tell them also to be marketable down the road. If Payscale isn't the forever job. And the second type of how I promote my personal brand of being the inspirer, the motivator, is just getting out there on very public domains. So I've been fortunate that I was awarded last year as a 40 under 40 nominee under the Puget honoree for the Puget Sound Business Journal. And through my relationship built with the editors at the Puget Sound Business Journal and the content that I provided them when writing myself, my article about myself, they asked me to write an article 6 months later for a special edition Women Who Are Leaders in the Community report about my professional journey. And so through publications about sharing my professional journey and story, that was an avenue to inspire others throughout the community. And so after the article was published, random emails came through saying, you've inspired me to do X. You've inspired me to take control of my career and go for something. Or you've inspired me to blah. And that was really, really rewarding. And I also do speaking engagements all the time. So you'll often, if we connect on LinkedIn, you'll see that I'm at various, not just legal bar organizations like female bar organizations or minority bar organizations. I'm often now asked to speak at organizations just for general professionals, female professionals, Asian American professionals, to talk about my journey and some actionable ways that an individual who is young or female or a minority can elevate themselves, elevate their career, and elevate their brand. And so in turn, all those speaking engagements, all those publications, it just substantiates my brand as being someone who inspires and motivates, not just others outside my organization and within my team as well.
Great. And it looks like we're out of time. Thanks everyone for tuning in today. Just wanted to say, consider joining the YLD if you like this kind of programming. If you're under the age of 36 or only have been in practice for 5 years or less, remember that you'll be automatically enrolled in the YLD for free. Other than that, we hope everyone found this webinar useful and are able to take some great sound bites from it, and we hope you have a great day.